Chapter 16. The News. At the start of Corey's third week of school, Don sat down next to Corey on the bus. "How was your hot date with the birdwatcher?" "It wasn't a date, and it was a blast. We saw all kinds of prairie chickens, and I got to talk to a reporter. It was great." "You spent a cold night snuggling up with a college woman, and all you can talk about are some chickens?" "They're prairie chickens." "Sometimes I wonder about you. So what did you do Friday night when the rest of the school was at Jake's?" "I sat around watching TV with my mom and her new boyfriend." "So do you wish you would have gone to the party?" Not really." The bus pulled into school to start what Corey had hoped would be an uneventful day. The first 2 hours were certainly boring enough. Third hour in the library changed all of that when Ms. Osseo dropped a copy of the Wisconsin Sentinel Gazette on the table in front of him. "Central Wisconsin Youth Works to Save Threatened Birds" was written across the top of Section 2 in big letters, along with a picture of Corey sitting next to Wendy and Steve. "It looks like the article was even picked up by the wire services," said Ms. Osseo. "It says that you're an expert on grassland birds." "No, I'm not. I just think they're cool." "Well, I think this article is cool." "I guess." Corey didn't admit that he thought it was cool, too. Any other place or time, and he'd be jumping on the furniture with joy. But at this school, that article was bad news. The only good thing was that no one ever read the newspaper. "Here, why don't you take this extra copy home? I'm sure your foster parents would love to see it." "Thanks, Miss Osseo." Corey hid the article in his folder. He would show Ben and Ellen, but no one else. Walking to lunch, Corey noticed a crowd of students gathering around the office window looking at something that had just been posted. As he got closer, he saw the newspaper article, laminated and taped to the inside of the glass. He knew he was in trouble now. In the lunchroom, there were a few more stares than usual, and in the hallway he heard his name mentioned a few more times than was commonplace, but there were no major incidents until 7th hour. Corey was almost finished getting dressed when it happened. Someone threw a towel over his head from behind and pulled it back hard. This not only acted as a blindfold, but also served to pull him to the ground. The first fist hit his head before he could struggle to get free from the blindfold. Reeling from the pain, he curled up on the floor as the next 6 blows found his head. A kick to the back made a loud thud, and the unknown attackers ran off. The next sound Corey heard was the voice of Mr. Taxiday. "Hey, Corey, what happened?" As Corey tried to explain what had happened, he found the note that was taped to his back. It read, "Nice article, Prairie Fairy." He had reached his limit. Corey put his head in his hands and cried. Less than 30 minutes later, he sat in the passenger seat of Ellen's car heading home. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "A while, I guess, but I've always been able to handle it." "You should have talked to us about it." "I know, but I thought it was getting better." "Apparently it wasn't. I'll talk with Karen, and we'll get this all straightened out." "I'm not going back." "Oh, yes, you are." "What's the use? I'll never fit in there." "What will you prove by not going back?" Corey didn't answer. He just looked out the window at the potato fields. "Could you drop me off at the Barrens and let me walk home?" Ellen understood what he was really asking for. He needed some time alone to work this out. She knew very well what that was like. She also knew that she'd needed almost 8 years to do the same thing. "Can you be home in an hour?" I guess." Ellen dropped Corey off at the large wooden sign. She looked around at the openness of the area and had to admit to herself that she didn't understand his attachment to this place. But he liked being here, and that was good enough. It was always windy in the Barrens, but today the wind was stronger than usual. The wind rushing past his ears kept Corey from hearing anything but a constant muffled roar. He would hear no cranes today, but he didn't mind. It was a warm spring day, and he was where he wanted to be. Anywhere but at school. He knew that Ellen and Ben would insist he return to school tomorrow. There would be no way to avoid that. He'd heard Mrs. Danos tell Ellen that the 4 kids who attacked him would be out of school for 3 days, and when they returned, they would be under threat of expulsion if there was any more trouble. But that was only a small part of the problem. Once again, he felt like an outsider just because he was different. Corey lay down on the mat of dead grass and watched the clouds blow by. He focused on one cloud bank in particular and tried to block everything else out of his mind. The wind was getting stronger as he continued to concentrate on the rising cumulus clouds. If this were any other time, he would have noticed that the first spring thunderstorm was building. But he was not thinking about storms right now. He was trying not to think about anything. Corey began to feel light-headed, so he closed his eyes. When he reopened them, the dizziness was still there, but it was different somehow. Instead of watching the clouds from the grassy field, he felt almost as if he were in them. He could feel himself being pulled up with the rising air currents and turning circles through the clouds. He felt somehow free from the weight of gravity. He saw, or imagined he saw, the Barrens as if he were high above it in a plane. With a clarity he had never before experienced, he could see the stands of oaks and the deer trails. He could see the large wooden sign and the road that led to his house. Throughout this imagined flight, he felt unusually secure, a sense of security he hadn't felt for months. He closed and reopened his eyes once more, and the feeling was gone. The wind was calmer, and his head felt better. He sat up and gazed at the line of clouds that continued to build and saw a speck turning circles in the sky. He didn't have to study it long to figure out what it was. He already knew. It was a bald eagle. Corey sat for a few minutes to clear his head before starting his walk home. He knew he would have to go to school tomorrow, so he would just have to find a way to deal with it. Simply put, he had to choose between fitting in at school or being the kind of kid he wanted to be. It really wasn't a choice. It was more of a realization. He was who he was, and if the kids at school didn't like it, too bad. With his spirits lifted by having sorted out the issue and by that strange dream, he felt he could now face whatever the last weeks of the school year had to throw at him. "Before you say a word," Corey said to Ellen as he walked in the door, "I'm going to school tomorrow. I've decided that I can't let a few jerks try to tell me how to live." "You sure are a stubborn kid. That's one of the things I love about you." Corey smiled. "When will Ben be home?" "He called this morning from Milwaukee. He said he should be home by 5, but the storms may slow traffic a bit. Why don't you go get cleaned up?" A heavy spring rain was falling outside. Corey sat at the table after dinner as Ben and Ellen drank coffee. "Even if the kids at school don't think the newspaper article was impressive, we certainly do," Ben said. He lifted a small wrapped package from the floor and set it on the table in front of Corey. "We wanted to get you something to celebrate." Corey couldn't think of anything to say. He just looked at the package. "Thanks," he finally said. "Well, open it," Ellen prodded. Corey slowly pulled the paper away from the box, revealing a small cassette player and a pair of headphones. "It's been a while since I've picked out a gift for a teenager. I think I goofed," Ben said, looking disappointed in himself. "It just dawned on me that you don't have any tapes to listen to." "I have one," Corey said. "In fact, it was the last thing my father ever gave me. This is perfect. Thank you." A smile returned to Ben's face. "Well, why don't you take it upstairs and try it out?" Ellen said. "But I don't want you listening to it while you do your homework, okay?" "Sure." Corey stood and turned back to face Ben and Ellen. With both hands tightly gripping the back of a kitchen chair, he said slowly, choosing his words carefully, "It seems like you're the only people who really like being around me, but—" Corey swallowed hard. "What if they send me someplace else, and the people aren't like you?" It was clear by the look on his face that this was something he had been thinking about for a while. Ellen was shaken by the question. She had gotten so used to his living here that she had not considered his ever leaving. "No one is taking you away, so just relax," she said. "I guess," Corey said, not sounding convinced. He headed upstairs. Ellen was not convinced either. "That's the second time he's brought that up," Ben said, as he reached for Ellen's hand. "It makes no sense worrying. There's nothing we can do about it anyway." "Yes, there is." Lying on his bed, Corey looked at the last tape his father had given him. Neatly printed on the side of the tape case were the words, "Another Challenge." It had been a game between them. He would string together a collection of rock tunes, and Corey would try to guess what they had in common. The first tape his father made was easy. It was all songs about rain. The next tape was more difficult. It was a collection of songs that had Jackson Browne singing somewhere in the background. It had taken Corey a month to figure out the meaning. He held the last tape, knowing only that it contained a collection of songs his father had wanted him to listen to and understand. He would never know if he'd solved the challenge. He remembered how his father would try to explain the meaning of the lyrics to songs. Corey understood most of them. His mother's Bee Gee albums were another thing altogether. He would spend hours arguing with his father about what the lyrics meant. That's one of the things he missed. Arguing. Not fighting, not yelling, just friendly arguing. Sometimes it went on for days. Sometimes his father would say things he didn't mean just to get an argument started. It was one of the few times when Corey felt that an adult respected him. He wasn't too young to understand. But those days were gone. His father's albums, along with everything else that had been in the apartment, were in a storage locker in Madison. He would listen to this tape, but there would be no one to argue with. Corey put the headphones on and pressed play. He turned the light off and hit the bed as the first guitar riff of a Peter Gabriel song titled Salisbury Hill began. He resolved to concentrate extra hard to understand the lyrics. Corey was overwhelmed by the lyrics. With each song he listened to, he was carried deeper and deeper into his hidden memories of his father. Corey fell asleep, wishing he could be near him again. Ben and Ellen slept through the crashes of thunder but were wakened by a muffled scream. "I'll go," said Ben. Corey's door was open and his light was on as Ben walked in. "You okay, bud?" "Yeah, I just don't like storms." "Well, let's go down and see what's on TV," Ben said. "Good idea." The two settled in on the sofa. No words were spoken. None were needed. Corey moved so he could rest his head on Ben's shoulder. Within minutes, they were both asleep with the TV still on. 5 o'clock in the morning found the TV off and a comforter over the two of them.